And welcome to another pet. Today we're going to be using Great American Pastels on velour. So velour, as I've already reviewed, is a fiber-based paper. It's very thin, but it has fibers sticking up like a low shag carpet, or when you run your hand across it, it feels like a flannel shirt. So we're using that today because, as you can see, this dog, a cute dog named Magnum, is a short-haired dog, and he has just a soft look to him. So velour is going to fit the bill to get that effect and not have a lot of work put into it, and yet you still have this great soft look to Magnum. So that's what we're going to use. So today is base coats. We're going to just basically slather on different colors and get sort of the base coaty look that we want. Since it is base coats, there's not a lot of detail going into this. It's just a matter of getting some color. You don't want just a blank spot and then go in and try to do detail on that, because it just looks weird. So what you want is a nice base coat, get some good looking colors down, and then you go back over and add your details, like details in the eyes, the shadows, the highlights, details into the nose and the collar and all this other stuff. We do that later. So we're using Grumber is our main color for this. Grumber actually matches Magnum quite well. If you look at the comparison between the reference photo and the drawing, you can sort of see that it really does make a nice resemblance come through. So we have, in most pastels, Great American is one, you'll have a color, and then what they'll do is they'll add a little white to that color, and then they'll give it a different number. So you'll have the highest number, which will be like 215.0, which is the darkest Grumber. And then they'll add a little white, and they have 215.1, which is a little lighter. And they'll gradually do that all the way to like 215.6 or whatever. So we're using the different Grumbers here. We're using the whole range, actually, everything from 0 all the way down to 6. So as you can see right here, I think this is 5. So you don't want the lightest right there, but you don't want the darkest either. You want something in between. So what I'm doing is I'm going over with the lighter color, like 5, and then I'm hitting it with the 3, which is a little darker. And so then you get that nice contrast between the two. And as you can see, I'm wiping my hand over it, and what that does is shoves the dust down into the carpet fibers of the velour. So what you don't want is for it to sit on top, because then it moves around. And worse yet, after it moves around, it'll get all over your clothes and all this other stuff. So what I like is to have the base coat shoved pretty far in there, and then you come back with the pencils and do your fine details, because the pencil is a harder pastel. This is soft, what I'm using now. So the pencil is going to be a harder pastel, so it's going to be able to make some fine lines. It's going to be able to give some nice detail into there. So one of the challenges we have with Magnum is he doesn't really have any long hairs anywhere. So when we come back with the pencils, it's going to be sort of to add the highlights, to add the little textures and things like that. But since we don't have any long hairs, we're just going to have to make really short lines here and there and sort of get a little detail in there without being obnoxious. What you don't want to do is treat this dog like a lion or something, to where you come in and make 10,000 long hairs or 10,000 little hairs, and then it distracts from the final product, which you want to look nice. So here coming in with Grumber, I believe this is either 4 or 5. So you can see the highlight or the lights are coming from the top. So you kind of want to get the shadows on the right side of the face there, and then you want to get the light on the left side of the face. So kind of want to keep that theme going and have it a little dark. And we're going to do that with pastel pencils as well. We're going to come in, you see the right side of the face is going to be a little darker. So we're going to accentuate that with when we come in to detail it, okay, with the pencils. But for now, we're just getting this super, super soft pastel. So when I first started doing pastels, I really didn't have any soft pastels. I didn't think they were necessary. But the more that I do this, the more I think soft pastels are the way to go for base coats. What I had done before was to come in with a harder pastel and then try to jam it into the velour. But the problem is that leaves gaps. So you would constantly have the paper showing, which just doesn't look good at all. So you definitely want to cover all of the paper and make sure that that's not having a bunch of gray show through. Nothing looks worse on a pet than, you know, just a bunch of gray area here and there. So you want to make sure it's mostly covered up, because if you have this big bald gray spot, that just doesn't look good. Especially some people use these colored papers, and so what they'll end up with is like a beige paper, and the beige will peek out on a brown pet like Magnum or something, and it looks odd. So, because beige is sort of, I mean, so the beige paper, some of them have a little, you know, yellowish tone to them. And yellow doesn't look good on a dog that doesn't have any yellow. One of the other challenges we have with Magnum is in the nose area, he has a pinkish hue right there. So we're going to come in with a pink later, but the problem with that is you don't want to overdo it. Luckily it's pastel, so you can just sort of dust it. Get a little bit of a dusting in there and it'll look nice. So here I come with some white pastels to get a little bit of that highlight. And then in a minute here, we're going to come down to the bottom section of Magnum where you have the shadowed white area down there. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And I think every white dog that I've done has been really challenging, because you can't put pure bright white and expect it to look good. It just will never look great. So, especially since this white is in shade, you're going to have to use 3, 4, 5 different colors in that white to make it look good. So that's pretty much what I did. I have a skin tone pastel. I put a little of that on the, you see that there's a red tint to the white down there? I put a little of that skin tone pastel down in there, and then put a little gray, and then we put some white highlights. So you just want to keep that nice and calm, because it's not bright white, and if you jam bright white in there, it's going to look terrible. So the other thing we have to worry about later is the background is bright orange. So we're going to need to desaturate that orange. We got a lot of colors to choose from, and we're going to use a heavily desaturated orange so that the background doesn't take away from the dog. Because right now, if you look away from the dog for a second, then look back, the first thing your eye goes to is that bright orange. And that's not what I want in the final painting. So we're going to get the orange, we're going to have a desaturated version of it, and then we're going to go from there. So the rest of the background is not too bad. You have that white, and we're going to calm that white down a bit. Then at the bottom you have the black, so I don't want it pure black. We're going to make that a little gray, dark gray. And then you have the dresser door on the left, and that's fine, that color is fine, just to lighten it up a bit. So that's the thing with backgrounds, you want to make sure it doesn't detract from your main subject. So here we go with the bottom section here. We have just the area down there is in heavy shade. So you want to make sure and replicate that. So I believe I'm using a 3 here, and then when you rub it in, it makes it a little lighter. So I don't want to get the fine details of where the white stops and the brown begins. I don't want to deal with that yet. As well as the dog is cut off the picture's sort of cut off down there. So I want to fade that out. I don't want to have an abrupt stop to the dog. I just want to kind of fade it out. So we're going to do that with the pencils. So here we go with the skin tone, and as you can see, that's nice, not white color there. So then you rub it in, and I still have remnants of some of that brown on my glove, so that's going to mix in with that and give it a realistic look as well. What you don't want is a pure color with no brown in it, because you have brown all over. It's going to the light is going to reflect that into the chest area there. So now we're coming in with a white and lightening it up a little bit, but as you can tell, when we come in with the pencils, we're going to make that a little darker. So that's fine as is. You just want a little bit of a hair texture in it, and that's sort of my goal there. So this is going to be heavily shaded underneath the chin, just getting sort of a base in there for now, and making it where it's not bright neon white, which is what I wanted to avoid. So the area up here, you have a little bit of shade under the eyes, and we'll do the eyes next time and have a lot of detail in those. So every time you want to do eyes, you definitely want at least 3 colors. What you don't want to do is come into the eyes and have like one color and then, sort of write it off. The eyes have a lot of detail, and that's where everyone's face is going to go when they look at the dog. So you want as many colors as you can jam in there that look realistic. So you can tell you're going to have some red in there. You can have a little bit of the brown. Obviously, you can have the black. We're going to have some of that deep, dark brown that we're using now, except we're going to put it around the outskirts of the eyeball. And it's going to look really good. So we'll get all that detail next time. So for the collar, he has a light gray, but the light gray is really picking up a lot of the skin tone, and I don't like that. I wanted it to be distinct. So this is just a judgment call on my part from doing a lot of these. As you can see, I got the collar and I made it a Dorian color, which is a purplish gray. So I wanted that Dorian color in there, and I think that's going to look great once you put black around it. It's going to have a fantastic look. What I don't want is the color that it is now just doesn't have enough variance in it, just for me. So here we go with the Grumber. We're back with the Grumber, and you can see we use the Grumber 0, which is the darkest one, has no white. We use that for the underside of the ear. Now most people, I think, and I've seen this before, would come in with that darker side of the ear and come in there with black. And we're going to put some black into it, but I don't want to just smooge black all through there. So I got the same color that I'm using for the rest of the dog, and I got the darkest version of it, and I put it into there. That way, you have all of the matching sort of tones between the dog and the underside of the ear. So here we go. We have a I don't know what color this is. I think it's like dragon's blood. It's like a skin tone looking thing, and you can tell that doesn't quite match the reddish tone of the dog, but I don't care because that's just sort of giving it a hint for now. I think the dragon's blood looks good at the bottom left side there, right at the bottom left side of the nose area. I think the dragon's blood really nails it. But obviously, as you come closer to the nostrils, it's a little bit more pronounced, and we're going to do that with pencils. So a lot of this stuff is with pencils. So that is pretty much it. That's the base coat. Only took a little under an hour, and we have a good-looking base-coated dog. So here I'm showing the reference photos. Tune in next time. We'll do the pencils, and then we will start on the background. Thank you so much for watching my video.